not necessarily tribal or regional.
All right, thank you for staying. This is Daybreak on Trust TV. Time for us to take a look at the dailies on Daybreak. And we'll begin with the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. The lead story has a kicker that says, after board's dissolution, unease in federal government agencies as management fear sack. The writer says some chief executives relocates to Abuja to lobby. Emphasis should be on competence. You'd find that on page 4, all the details. Above the lead story, Kano governor stops salaries of 10,800 workers employed by Ganduje. You'd find all that on page 8. Then Hajj, Nigerian pilgrims lament tents shortage, poor feeding, on page 6. You also have Tinubu will have lost if Buhari removed fuel subsidy, according to Garba Shehu on page 5. Electricity tariff hike will worsen plight of Nigerians, group says on page 19. Now, below that, boat mishap, police divers recover bodies of 2 ABU students in Calabar. You also have court upholds FRSC's power to impound vehicles on page 31. Abducted Kwara bride, sisters-in-law regain freedom after 7 million naira ransom on page 17. The pictorial shows you some Nigerian pilgrims getting set for Arafat yesterday. So these are the main stories on the Daily Trust cover page today.
Now let's take a look at the Punch newspaper. It has the lead story that has a kicker, Senate Minority Leader. And we have PDP Atiku set to clash with G5 over Tambuwal. The first rider, Atiku, a party man, will back PDP choice, says aide, as Minority Leader emerges July 4th. And the second rider, G5 backing Jarigbe. Otham's aide insists lawmakers want PDP on Sokoto ex-governor. Beneath that, we have the photograph of the vice president decorating the new customs CG. And we have a caption that says, Customs CG decorated, promises technology-driven operations. We also have Salah, federal government declares holidays. Oshun cancels free train ride. 7 passengers, Okada rider die in Oyo crashes. Tinubu returns today, may present ministerial list after Salah. And just above the masthead, we have Buhari hands over 974 billion naira uncompleted road projects. Disco's backtrack on tariff hike await NEC approval. Still on the Punch newspaper, we have World Bank OK's fresh $500 million loan for federal government. These are the major stories on the Punch newspaper for today.
All right, and on the Guardian newspaper, the lead story says Bleak Festival, Muslim faithful groan as subsidy removal squeezes family budgets. As on page 6. Group decries prevailing hardship in Nigeria. Ribadu takes over as NSA vows to deepen security and stability. Despite Mba's order, Monday sit-at-home persists in Enugu. Nigeria, developing countries at risk of deglobalization. You also have above the lead story, I delayed removal of petrol subsidy for Tinubu APC to win election, says Buhari. Confusion in power sectors as discos hint at 300 naira per kilowatt electricity tariff. So these are the main stories on The Guardian this morning.
Over now to the Vanguard newspaper. It has a lead story that says Forex challenge driving petrol price towards 581 naira per litre. And beneath the pictorial, we have a story that says, I delayed petrol subsidy removal to allow Tinubu APC win polls. This is according to the former president, Muhammadu Buhari. We also have 10 drowned as boat capsizes in Akwa Ibom waterways. Still on the Vanguard, shake-up NAV appoints, redeploys 98 officers of air rank. Salah, federal government declares Wednesday, Thursday public holidays. And above the masthead, we have, this is from the NSA, Ribado vows to subdue insecurity, stabilize Nigeria. We're coming after you. NSCDC reads riot act to oil thieves. We also have federal government renames airports after Buhari, Usman Danfodio, Awolowo, others. Tinubu wants stigma on drug use removed. These are the major stories on the Vanguard newspaper.
Right. Another Sun newspaper, that's the Daily. This morning, NIA ex-DG flights back, open can of worms. Then the lead story, Buhari's ex-aide reveals fuel subsidy secret, says ex-president delayed its removal to help APC win presidential election. You also have FG warns security agencies against use of torture, cruel treatment of detainees. Government suspends Lagos-Ibadan expressway construction works to ease movement. You also have anti-weapons proliferation agency raises the alarm over false outfits in Northeast. Shake-up as NAV appoints new branch chiefs, AOC's spokesman, others. Abia Oti sets up panel for recovery of government funds. Idil Kabir, passengers pay over 150,000 naira for economy seat. Tinubu will secure every inch of Nigeria, says Ribado. And then you have also Enugu targets $2 billion in diaspora and investment forum. All that on page 9 to 29. These are the main stories on the Daily Sun this morning.
Over now to the Nigerian Tribune, and the lead story says subsidy removal would have cost APC 2023 elections. This is according to Buhari. Says we didn't want to distract Tinubu Shetima. Beneath that, we have federal government declares tomorrow, Thursday, Eid Kabir holidays. 7 die, 15 injured in Oyo Ogbomosho Road accident. Abuja Electricity Distribution Company denies tariff hike. We also have Kano residents protest further demolition of buildings. And there's a rider there that says government to rebuild demolished roundabout on city's outskirts. Beneath that, anti-money laundering. CBN directs banks to increase surveillance on politically exposed persons. And above the masthead, we have Lagos blue-red lines to commence operations in August. Salah, consumers lament high cost, scarcity of tomatoes, pepper. We also have both mishap, marine police, locals recover bodies of 3 missing students. These are the major stories on the Tribune for today.
All right, now we'll be taking perspectives on some of the stories shortly after this breather.
But in a situation where you find that a look like the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that. find that a person look like the same.
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that.
All right, thank you for staying. You're watching Daybreak on Trust TV, and it's time for us to take a look at, perspectives on some of the stories that we have on our front pages this morning. Stella, interesting stories this morning.
Yeah.
We are hearing the former spokesman of the president, Garba Shehu, in a statement responding to some comments by President Tinubu, who is in Paris for summit, where he made some comments about, the delay in the removal of fuel subsidies, suggesting that the president, allowed the subsidy removal to linger for some reason. And here you have the former spokesman, Garba Shehu, trying to set the record straight, to say that, well, the former president didn't, deliberately decide not to remove the subsidy, but decided to allow it linger so that the APC could, have victory in the 2023 general elections. And that seems like more of a banter, if you like.
Ayuba, I mean, shortly after the former spokesman spoke yesterday, I saw a lot of comments on social media, and a lot of questions people were asking was, well, the president had 8 years in office. He had 8 years. And apart from the fact that he had 8 years, this was something that the former president, never believed in. I remember on several occasions, I actually heard him say, who is subsidizing who? He never believed in petrol subsidy. He never believed in it. So a lot of Nigerians actually thought that that would be one of the first things he was going to do when he came in. So yeah, maybe there were reasons why he didn't remove it, but saying that it was because he didn't want the APC to lose the election.
But
imagine if he had removed it in the first year of his, in 2015, in 2016, or in 2017, he would have had some years to maybe manage whatever damage that would have caused, and then maybe that wouldn't have caused, maybe that wouldn't have affected his party.
But Stella, let's not forget, in fairness to the former administration, recall that we had the PIA that was legislated upon under that administration and passed.
The PIA that had been in the works,
yes,
but was signed.
This is we know how long it has taken.
It had been in the works for a long time, but it was
almost 2 decades in the National Assembly, and nobody had the boldness to deconstruct.
It's one of the pluses of the past administration. I agree with you.
The oil and gas sector until the president came. With the PIA, he made certain provisions. He deregulated the industry in a way that will allow for the removal of the fuel subsidy.
And also under the past administration, they removed the subsidy on diesel, which was a
exactly. A number of subsidies were removed under the previous administration.
Yes.
So looking at the statement of Garba Shehu, where he mentioned quite a number of them, he said the electricity subsidy, was removed under President Muhammadu Buhari, former President Muhammadu Buhari. He said fertilizer subsidy, you had this Hajj Christian pilgrim subsidies that was in place, was removed by former President Muhammadu Buhari. You had the diesel subsidy as well, that was removed. You had the kerosene, the aviation,
Ayuba, the thing is this. Ayuba, the thing is this.
Other subsidies
I think what a lot of Nigerians are saying is that, yes, all of these things that you mentioned were done under the administration of the former president, and they were very laudable. However, the reason I think is a problem, the reason that was given by the former spokesman, saying that the subsidy was not removed because they didn't want the APC to lose the election. This is an administration that had 8 years.
So Nigerians can be very emotional with policies, with government policies. Think about removing that subsidy in the second term of President Muhammadu Buhari, with all the difficulties that Nigerians are dealing with, really, at the time. Don't forget that we've had to deal with quite a lot. Inflation was on a different level. So imagine if the former president had implemented that in his second tenure. There are political considerations.
Have you forgotten?
And this is the former spokesman now being honest and open to Nigerians to say that, look, these were for political reasons.
Ayuba,
and I mean, it's been kind really for me that he's even admitting that there were political reasons
Wait,
behind
but are you forgetting that this same APC went into an election where there was naira scarcity? Are you forgetting that? At the time, Nigerians were queuing up. At the time, Nigerians were using the naira to buy naira. They went into an election. They won. So
that too was also something that was considered.
So what I'm trying to say,
it's controversial, anyways.
Yes,
where
it's
you
controversial.
have people from within the same party actually arguing for and against the same
so
policy
what I'm trying to say,
instituted, or I would say introduced by the same government. So yes, I agree it's controversial, but then, I mean, in fairness to the former administration, I think that Nigerians should give him some kudos. And the party, the APC in this instance, just like the former spokesman Garba Shehu has said, should have been the one to respond to some of these speculations.
Ayuba,
but the party decided to be mute, so he felt to defend his boss.
I'm just saying what I saw read from what Nigerians, the way the Nigerians reacted. There are some Nigerians that are saying that, okay, fine. Let's say that the government didn't want to remove the subsidy. They are saying that maybe the past government should have put in place some measures, maybe fix some of the refineries, maybe started the process so that now that the subsidy has been removed, maybe the impact wouldn't have been so, much.
Stella, again, another point. Well, I'm just maybe being the devil's advocate in this instance.
I agree.
It was under the former administration that we saw the Dangote refinery, eventually being expected to come on stream in the next few weeks, right? So that's also something to count as say, okay, well, the former administration kind of laid the ground for the incoming government to have the nerves, to have the boldness to say, okay, let's take this off. Because, I mean, we cannot take away the fact that the current administration knows that the Dangote refinery will be coming on stream very soon. And it's part of the arguments that they have made. That with the Dangote refinery,
I like your argument.
The effects
I like your argument
of the removal of the subsidy may not be that much.
I like your argument, and I like the fact that you're playing devil's advocate. But then don't forget that the Dangote refinery is a privately owned refinery.
Yes,
Nigeria has its own refineries.
Yes, it is.
So the argument by some persons,
yes, it is. But this is a refinery
that one or two should have been fixed.
This is a refinery locally refining petroleum products for Nigerians. So certainly it's not going to be the same with importing petroleum products.
I agree that the former president couldn't have done everything. And from everything you reeled out, he did quite a lot, the removal and all of that. But the problem is with the reason.
Well, I would allow Garba Shehu to continue to defend his boss.
Because if you have 8 years and you say it's because of elections, well,
we have another story, interesting one, really, from Kano State this time around, talking about the demolition in the state. Kano government this time around, aside demolishing the structures, is stopping salaries of 10,800 workers employed by his former I would say his predecessor, Abdullahi Ganduje. So a lot of people are also raising. And yesterday I saw also that a committee was set up. Okay, he inaugurated some of his commissioners yesterday. And also a committee was set up that will receive complaints arising from the demolition exercise in the states. And I'm like, is it medicine after after death now? How do I describe it? Because I mean, the governor of Kano has faced a lot of criticism for some of the decisions and the demolition he has undertaken in the state, and people are beginning to see that this is more of a personal grudge he has between him and the former governor. And now we are seeing, in addition to that, this stopping of salaries for 10,800 workers employed by Ganduje. I mean, what crime have those workers committed?
No, but the good thing about this is that he says that they are just stopping it for now. Investigation will be carried out, and those who were legally employed, they will pay them their salaries. For those who were not legally employed, then those ones will be let out of the system. I think it boils down to the fact that a current government is about to leave, and then he makes these appointments, So sometimes you don't even know. They make these appointments, and then the people are the victims. You understand? You know, we saw it happen in Oshun, where the governor was leaving and then he appointed 30 permanent secretaries like a week before he left office. I mean, these are things that maybe people, when people are about to leave office, they should consider before making these appointments.
All right, well, let's get some other perspectives from our guest reviewer in the studio, Dr. Theophilus Abba. Thank you so much for joining. Dr. Theophilus is the director Daily Trust Foundation. You're welcome to Daybreak.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
All right. Well, just before you came in, a lot of issues really right now that we are talking about. We started off with the issue of the response of the former spokesman to the president, Garba Shehu, to a comment made by President Bola Tinubu while in France, talking about the delay in the removal of the fuel subsidy, where the spokesman is saying, well, the president didn't delay it just for himself, but he decided to do that in the interest of the party, the APC, so that they can secure victory in the 2023 general election. We'd like to give you the opportunity to bear your mind on this as well.
Well, a lot of things are coming up concerning what we call fuel subsidy. And when Garba Shehu, when I read his comments, I was surprised because, you see, you don't take decisions based on politics alone. You know, a lot of fraud has been going on. And for us to say, okay, this fraud is allowed because of politics, I don't think it's justifiable. Now, when you talk about policies, you are doing it for the good of the people. We were thinking that apart from saying remove subsidy, you know, like you could have said recently, I think on another television station, that look, people made a lot of money to the point that they were tired of making money. They would say, oh, Mr. President, why don't you remove this subsidy? So many people have defrauded Nigerians. And for you to say, okay, we allow this fraud to continue so that APC can win the election, I don't think it's justifiable. And
let's not, also another point to raise is that these were the same people that championed the protests under the Goodluck Jonathan administration, yes, when they tried to remove the subsidy. So it was not all about Nigeria at that time, it was for political reasons. Would it be right to say that?
I think whether they did it for political reasons in 2012 and they did it for political reasons under Buhari, is they've changed Nigerians seriously. You know, you see, when you talk about subsidy, you know, when you talk about, I mean, so you need this thing, you want to help the people, not to defraud the people. I don't know if I'm looking at it from another perspective. You are saying that at the point NP said that we're consuming 92 million barrels per day, 92 million liters per day. At the point NP said that. At the point they say 100 million liters per day. Now we discovered that, I mean, since the subsidy was removed, we're consuming about 42 million liters of petrol per day. So what happened to it, whether it is 58, you know, or 28? What happened to that money? You see, you are saying you are subsidizing something with a certain amount of money, and we notice that the subsidy is not helping the people. It's some few persons who have ganged up to use the subsidy to steal our resources. So I'm even thinking that Tinubu, instead of going back and forth and criticizing the Buhari government, I don't know whether it was criticism, we should probe the subsidy. Yes, he mentioned we should even probe it. Who are those that benefited from it? We should probe it. Who are those that benefited from the subsidy? Who are those that got this money that they shouldn't have gotten? You know, so I'm thinking that in governance, things should be well thought out. If you know that this thing is being stolen, and you are saying, no, we allowed it to be stolen so that we can win the election for political reasons, you have been unfair to Nigerians. That is my own thinking. They are just being unfair to Nigerians because the money that went into that subsidy will be used to do other things. We are talking of saying, oh, government can no longer fund education, government cannot fund health, government cannot fund that. Meanwhile, the money that ought to have been chartered into those social infrastructure have been stolen by some persons, which is unfair to Nigerians.
And Doctor, this is an administration that was in office for 8 years.
For 8 years.
Being in office for 8 years, will a re-election be the top agenda of any government? I
mean, for 8 years, I mean, re-election and using this kind of strategy to win election is not the right thing, like I try to put it. Because if you had done well in 8 years, Nigerians will vote for you, will vote for your party. But you did those things that you did because you knew that you didn't do well, and that you will not, your party will not win another election. So you had to allow things to go wrongly so that you can win. An election. It is not, shouldn't be the priority of that government. We wanted Buhari, when he came in, wanted him to make sure that, look, we did things, we fought corruption primarily. Because he said again and again he was going to fight corruption. Now he allowed corruption to prevail for 8 years. And you are not saying, oh, because you wanted your party to win an election.
Now, in removing the subsidy, don't you think that the previous administration deserves some commendation for perhaps laying the legal framework for the removal of the subsidy? For instance, the signing of the PIA.
You see, I don't think the subsidy removal depended on the PIA. That is my own thinking, because we have, you see, the law that set up PIA.
Deregulating the industry.
No, it's not about, you see, what we are talking about, when we talk about subsidy, it was the fraud involved that was the issue. I don't know how to, clarify it. The reason why subsidy had to be removed was not because of deregulation or not deregulation, but because of the fraud that is entrenched in it. The PPRA was set up, to look at the difference between the market price and the price at which the fuel is brought into Nigeria. And that is to say that, if you supplied petrol at maybe 150, and we know that the market price is, what we are selling to Nigeria is 70, then you get 80 naira, Okay, if PPRA had done its work, the difference and the massive loss of funds that we're talking about wouldn't be there. But
what about in terms of deregulating the industry by way of allowing other players to come into the industry? Say, for instance, that status of an NPC being the sole importer of the product, into the country. You now have other, petroleum marketers who now, by virtue of the PIA, are able to import this product.
No, okay, maybe. You see, I think when we talk about subsidies, it went from deregulation. Subsidy is not about deregulation. Deregulation means, we want others to come into the industry. You want you to import. We want you to set up the refineries.
Yes, but that creates a competition, isn't it? In terms of pricing, and for Nigerians to be able to access the product at a perhaps affordable or cheaper rate.
Well,
it's a competition that it creates.
But okay, I think the subsidies went from the competition. I don't know if I'm making sense. Subsidy is went from competition. You can subsidize the product without creating that competition. You can enable that competition without necessarily subsidizing the product. Because
yes, sir, but the thing is, you remove the subsidy, that automatically increase the price of the product. That's what Nigerians are complaining about.
Yes,
500 plus now.
Yes.
But there is the expectation that with more players in the industry and with that competition, the price is likely to come down. Okay,
I understand. No, when you say more players in the industry, as long as we continue to import, you understand? As long as we continue to import, the difference between oil company 1 and oil company 2 may not be much. You understand? Because if we import, let's say from the Netherlands, all of us imported maybe 100 million liters from the Netherlands at the same price. The freight cost the same. The insurance cost the same. And we are coming to sell in Nigeria. You are likely going to sell at the same rate. Now, so I don't think there will be so much difference. The kind of competition they are talking about, I don't think it will be, because okay, let's take kerosene for instance. Now, kerosene has been deregulated, but there was never a time when Nigerians say, okay, if I went to filling station A, I will get kerosene at maybe 400 naira per liter, and when I go to B, I'll get it at 250 per liter. It never happened. The cost of kerosene has been up there. In fact, many Nigerians are no longer using kerosene. Yeah. So if you talk about diesel, it's the same thing. So you cannot say, diesel has since been deregulated. So you got diesel as a...
Doctor, I'm going back to my earlier question, because a new administration just came in. Just to go back, what the spokesperson of the former president admitted in his statement was that they failed to take a difficult decision because of a re-election. Should that be what Nigerians should be expecting? Should Nigeria be having to deal with that? That a government comes saying there is a difficult decision to be taken, albeit that difficult decision is in the interest of the people, but then it is not taken.
Well, it is totally unacceptable. Because like I tried to analyze earlier, you see, if you allow fraud, the basic thing about the subsidy for me is the fraud that is embedded in it. Now, if you allow this fraud to continue because you wanted your party to be re-elected, then it is totally wrong. Then secondly, you see, if Buhari really thought about removing subsidy, if he really meant it, you see, there were things that were supposed to be put in place for subsidy to be removed. For instance, where does subsidy affect Nigerians if it was removed? Transportation sector. You see, most of us are complaining about this the removal because of transportation. You can't move from one place to another at the low cost. Now, if Buhari spent 8 years, even if it was to flood the country with luxury buses, these long buses that can take not less than 40-50 persons at a time, to move them from one place to another, even if it was that alone, it would have brought down the impact of subsidy. And these are things that ought to be done in 2015, 2016. They were not done. The background for removing subsidy was not there. Now, if you go to other countries where you sell this fuel at that rate, they have tram, they have metro, they have train, and then they have buses. So you don't even need to drive your car. It's only if you have all the money that you have, that is okay, let me put my car on the road. So you see people, even prime ministers, entering train. You see people entering buses. You see even professors going to class, even riding on bicycle. So you see, but in Nigeria, these things are not available. If you are moving from one place to another in this country today, you must either drive your car or enter a taxi at an expensive rate. What I'm saying is this: if we hadn't meant to remove subsidy, if he really had it at government, say, okay, what do we do to cushion the effect? Then let's do A, B, C, D. Then after putting this in place, now say, okay, we can now remove this subsidy. It didn't happen. So if you tell us it's because of re-election, you are unfair to Nigerians.
Well, I would always argue, in fairness to the previous administration, we had the issue of COVID-19. Let's not forget that. We had the issue of the Russia-Ukraine war impacting heavily on our economy. Let's not forget that. So perhaps maybe the timing wasn't just in favor of the former administration, but that's just me saying. Okay. Thank you so much, Doctor, for joining us on Daybreak, and we look forward to having you again.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Theophilus Abba is the Director of Daily Trust Foundation and guest reviewer for today.